Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be part of today's conference with such moving testimonial. My name is Behrooz Maghsoodi. I'm 28 years old and I live in Norway. We have been hearing the stories of each family and the eyewitnesses today. And even for me, despite being raised with this reality, I'm still in awe of what really happened in the summer of 1988 and throughout these years in Iran. Today, I would like to share the story of my family with you. In a family of 7 children, 6, including my mother, were jailed for supporting PMOI. 3 of my uncles were executed between the years 1981 and 1988. Saeed Atarzadeh Olia was 19 years old and arrested by the IRGC in 1981. His crime was supporting MEK. 2-3 days before execution, he called home to say that he was in the notorious Evin prison in Tehran. He was executed 18 days after his arrest, without any court or conviction. In the early years after revolution, the name of those executed were published in the national newspaper. My family found Saeed's name in the newspaper alongside the name of 90 other prisoners that were executed. The regime even censored Saeed's testament and gave it to our family. My uncle Saeed was a true hero, and the regime couldn't even tolerate his last words. This is the picture of my uncle Saeed, executed in 1981. Behrooz Atarzadeh Olia was my youngest uncle. He was arrested in June 1981 when he was 16 years old. Many youth, including Behrooz, were fed up with the situation and turned to the MEK as the alternative, which represented the desire for freedom and democracy. We don't know exactly where and how Behrooz was arrested, but the regime was really brutal and wanted to take revenge when they captured MEK supporters. Even though Behrooz was a minor at the time of his arrest, the regime kept him in the Evin and Ghazalesar prison for 7 years without a sentence and finally executed him in the 1988 massacre. And today I carry his name. My grandparents visited their children in the prison every month. But in the summer of 1988, the regime cut off all visitation and said that they have to come back the next month. However, after Behrooz was executed, the regime sent an agent to my grandfather's store and gave Behrouz's belongings in a bag to him and said, "We have executed your son for supporting infidels," also MEK. Until this date, we don't know how he was executed and where he was buried. This is the picture of Behrooz Atarzadeh Olia. My third uncle, Mohsen Atarzadeh Olia, was arrested in 1985. Mohsen owned a small technical business in the city of Mashhad. He was very popular in the area. He once called a friend who lived in Paris who was a supporter of MEK. Since all phone lines were tapped, Mohsen was arrested on charges of attempt to connect to the opposition group. He was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. Most describe him as a man of principles, who had a sense of humor even under the difficult conditions in the prison. According to his fellow inmates, he was always firm on his beliefs and protested the inhuman conditions in the prison, which also came at the price of more torture and solitary confinement. My father, Abul Hassan Maghsoodi, who was also political prisoner for 8 years, spent some time in the prison with Mohsen and always talks about his bravery. Once, when my great-grandmother asked him to give up the struggle, he replied that he can't put struggle against the dictatorship on hold until further notice. Iran will be free. He was 24 years old when he was arrested and executed 3 years later in the summer of 1988. Even though he was given a 10-year sentence, we still don't know how he was executed and where his grave is. Every summer revives the memory of fallen heroes for freedom, and I'm very proud of my uncles who chose to stand up against the mullah regime despite its heavy price. The massacre of 1988 remains to be one of the darkest chapters of modern history post-World War II, and is still one of the least exposed and discussed. The Iranian regime continued to deny the 1988 mass elimination of political prisoners. None of the perpetrators or masterminds have been brought to justice, and none of the regime's senior officials, including the Supreme Leader Ruhollah Khomeini, have been held accountable. The mullah regime's current head of judiciary, Ebrahim Raisi, was a member of the death committee. Raisi, who has boasted of his role in the massacres, is busy these days, issuing execution sentences for protesters. This is the direct result of the impunity. We, the families of the 1988 victims, demand an independent investigation by the UN into one of the most hideous crimes against humanity after the Second World War. Thank you for your time and giving me the chance to share our history.